Thank you for joining me for Supreme Lending's USDA Rural Development Guaranteed Loan Program Part 2. In this training session, we'll look at defining GUS, distinguishing between benefits and limitations of GUS, analyzing the GUS findings report, identifying credit requirements, and listing the requirements for data modification and loan resubmission. So let's get started taking a look at the Guaranteed Underwriting System, or GUS. Supreme Lending requires all USDA rural development loan files to be submitted to the Guaranteed Underwriting System. GUS is not a loan approval. Loan data entered into GUS is assessed through the scorecard and rule engine, and GUS provides recommendation in accordance to the applicant's credit profile. The GUS recommendations are accept, which means GUS has assessed the loan as an acceptable credit risk. Refer means that GUS has identified risk layers within the file, and a manual underwrite with a credit waiver is required. A GUS recommendation of refer with caution indicates that GUS has identified multiple layers of risk, and a manual underwrite with credit waiver is required. An ineligible recommendation means that GUS determines the loan file does not meet regulations. Now we'll take a look at some benefits of GUS. GUS recommendation will determine the amount of documentation that must be submitted to the rural development when requesting a conditional commitment. GUS provides a property and income eligibility determination, and a debt ratio waiver is not required for a GUS accept recommendation. The GUS findings report provides efficiency during the underwriting process. Now let's take a look at the limitations of GUS. GUS does not replace the human loan approval. GUS does not detect inaccurate calculations or data entry errors. GUS does not assess employment length, and GUS cannot read the credit report. It will utilize the eligible credit score in overall underwriting recommendation assessment. Let's do a quick knowledge check. It is the underwriter's responsibility to determine credit worthiness of the applicant when there is a GUS approval. True or false? The correct answer is true. GUS is only a tool to assist in overall risk evaluation. Underwriters must review the loan application documentation to ensure a prudent loan decision is made in accordance to guidelines and regulations. Underwriters are responsible for submitting the final underwriting submission through GUS. The recommendation is only valid if the data entered is accurate and supported. If GUS is loaded with incorrect and/or unsupported data, then the underwriting recommendation will not be valid. It is imperative that a full review of the initial GUS report is done prior to submitting for the final GUS underwriting findings report. Let's take an in-depth look at the GUS underwriting findings report. The underwriting recommendation will be displayed at the top of the GUS underwriting findings report. The following information is found above the underwriting summary. The submission sequence equals the number of times the application has been submitted, and last update refers to when the application was last updated in GUS. GUS will display the following information: the primary borrower, submission type, submission date, submitted by, and loan status. The lender information section will include the lender name, lender tax ID, USDA assigned branch number, GUS application ID number, and lender loan number. The mortgage information section includes an overview of important underwriting information. This includes the loan to value, PITI ratio, total debt ratio, and the loan amount, including any eligible closing cost and financed upfront guarantee fee. The sales price or contract sales price is included here, as well as the appraised value, any monthly mortgage credit certificate amount if applicable, and any temporary buy down if applicable. The monthly PITI and other monthly debt is included here, and the other monthly debt represents the total amount of other debt due monthly. The total monthly debt equals the monthly PITI and other monthly debt added together. Also included is the note rate, loan type, and loan term listed in months. The amortization type, loan purpose, and refinance purpose are also located here in the mortgage information section. The final portion of the mortgage information section includes payment shock, cash reserves, and months of cash reserves. Please be sure to pay close attention to the payment shock and months of cash reserves. Any eligibility issues with the property will be located in the property information section. You'll see property eligibility findings here. The income eligibility section outlines the data entered on the eligibility application page. Adjusted household income rounds to the nearest $10. The income eligibility findings section will reflect any issues with the household income eligibility. The information in this section should match the 3555-21 worksheet if this is completed correctly. The underwriter should review all income information with their income calculations. The next section is the loan applicant eligibility. Be sure to review the loan applicant risk for details when the recommendation is a refer with caution, or ineligible. There may be data entry errors that can be corrected. If so, correct those errors. Next, you'll find the lender required section, which lists all the documentation and underwriting conditions that must be completed or researched. Review all the conditions carefully. Some default conditions may not apply to the loan file. The lender is not responsible for reviewing the Rural Development's Required Conditions section. This section is used for USDA Rural Development internal review process. The GUS Underwriting Analysis Report is a simplified data review process of the data captured in the GUS application. The repayment income should match the Form 3555-21 worksheet. Now we'll take a look at the expenses section. The expenses section breaks out the housing and other expenses. Other expenses total all outstanding debts from the credit report. The monthly fee reflected in other in Encompass transmits into GUS. GUS places this fee in the annual fee for first year section. So be sure to remove the duplicate amount in the other section in GUS. Next, we'll take a look at the funds section, which calculates the funds required for closing, available verified funds, cash back, debts to be paid by closing, cash reserves, and months of cash reserves. Some asset types are not eligible to reflect in the Funds section, so please refer to the USDA Rural Development Handbook, Chapter 5 for more details. Now we'll take a look at the Credit Report section, which displays the borrower's name, credit score, date issued, last date updated, and the reference number. GUS Quality Control. The USDA Rural Development utilizes both random and targeted selection of loan files for quality control purposes. A message on the final GUS report will confirm when a full documentation file is required. Full file documentation reviews verify that the data input in the GUS file accurately matches the loan documentation. Let's take a moment for a knowledge check. As long as the GUS recommendation reflects accept, the underwriter is not responsible for reviewing payment shock and months of cash reserves. True or false? The correct answer is false. GUS is only a tool to assist in the overall risk evaluation. The underwriter must consider all approval and risk factors, including payment shock and the months of cash reserves. It's time now to take a look at credit. An RMCR is required if any of the following circumstances apply. An applicant disputes accounts. An applicant claims that collections, judgments, or liens that reflect as open on the credit report haven't been paid, but yet cannot provide any supporting documentation. An applicant claims that a debt shown on the credit report has a different balance and/or payment, but cannot provide a statement less than 30 days old. Or if the underwriter determines that it would be prudent to utilize an RMCR. For credit eligibility requirements, a minimum FICO score of 620 is required, but does not guarantee automatic approval. Each applicant must have at least one credit score. At least one applicant must have at least 2 credit trade lines with at least 12 months pay history. And non-purchasing spouse debts must be included in the DTI calculations when the subject property is in a community property state. Installment debts with more than 10 months remaining must be included in the DTI calculation. Revolving debts that have an outstanding balance must include a monthly payment in the DTI calculation. An estimated payment of 5% of the balance may be used when monthly payment doesn't exist. Student loans must include a monthly payment in the DTI that is the greater of 1% of the outstanding balance or the verified fixed payment. A verification of rent or mortgage history is not required with a GUS Accept recommendation. Purchase transactions with FICOs less than 680 require rental history with 0 30-day lates in the most recent 12 months. Refinance transactions must have 0 late payments within 180 days prior to the conditional commitment request to refinance. The applicant's credit profile must demonstrate the ability and willingness to repay debts timely. Underwriters must consider the applicant's overall credit management, including repayment patterns, credit utilization, and level of experience using credit when determining potential default risk. Underwriters are responsible for examining the credit report to ensure all warning signs of derogatory credit are properly addressed. The USDA provides lenders a method for evaluating an applicant's credit when a loan is manually underwritten. See Chapter 15 of the USDA Rural Development Handbook. Some indicators of unacceptable credit risk are one or more late mortgage payment of greater than 30 days in the most recent 12 months, late rent payments paid 30 or more days late within the last 12 months, foreclosures, short sales, or deed of lieu within 3 years of closing, a bankruptcy within 3 years of closing. For Chapter 7, an elapsed period of less than 3 years, but not less than 12 months, may be acceptable when the applicants experienced an extenuating circumstance. For Chapter 13, plans that are completed for 12 months or greater do not require a credit exception. When indicators of unacceptable credit exist, a credit exception waiver can be given if supporting documentation is provided documenting the applicant's creditworthiness. If the underwriter believes the applicant is creditworthy, document the justification in Encompass on the Underwriting Summary Page 2 Custom form. Ensure all supporting documentation is in X-Docs. List all compensating factors. And sign the 1008 for USDA to approve. Credit exception waivers should only be made in the following types of situations. A temporary situation is for circumstances that cause the credit problems were temporary in nature and beyond the applicant's control. This refers to a single time frame and does not apply to multiple derogatory incidents that do not occur in the same time period. Reduced housing expenses indicate a significant reduction in housing expenses, and this would be 50% or more. The review method for a manual underwrite with credit waiver: if the credit score is over 680, then the underwriter will perform a basic level of underwriting to confirm the applicant has an acceptable credit reputation, and 679, perform a comprehensive level of underwriting, including all aspects of the credit history to determine the ability and willingness to repay debts in a timely manner. The review method for a manual underwrite with credit score less than 640 is to perform a cautious level of underwriting, including all aspects of the credit history to determine the ability and willingness to repay, as well as the ability to manage obligations as agreed. Unless there are extenuating circumstances, credit scores below 640 should be viewed as a strong indication that the applicant does not have an acceptable credit reputation. Applicants with an outstanding judgment obtained by the United States in a federal court other than tax court are not eligible for a guaranteed loan unless the debt has been paid in full or otherwise satisfied. It's time for another knowledge check. In this example, our GUS recommendation is a refer. The applicant has a Chapter 7 bankruptcy discharged 28 months ago, and the applicant filed for that due to a loss of job. The applicant has been on the current job for 2 years and 1 month. The applicant's rent for the most recent 2 years has been $750 monthly. The new PITI for the loan will be $800. The ratios on the file are 19 and 31, and the applicant has 3 months of verified reserves. Can the underwriter grant an exception for the bankruptcy? Yes or no? The correct answer is yes. There were mitigating circumstances that were temporary in nature and beyond the applicant's control. The applicant lost a job, filed for the bankruptcy, and has since become employed again. Now we'll do another knowledge check. An applicant with a delinquent, non-tax federal debt is ineligible for a USDA Rural Development Loan Guarantee. True or false? The correct answer is true. Non-tax federal debts that are not satisfied are ineligible. Now we'll take a look at GUS data modification and loan resubmission requirements. The GUS recommendation may be compromised if changes are made after the conditional commitment. The following data changes do not require the GUS loan application to be updated: a decrease in the interest rate, a decrease in the loan amount, decrease of mortgage or personal liabilities, or an increase in assets. Underwriters must request the loan be released from rural development to modify the data and resubmit the loan through GUS for an updated final underwriting recommendation. Things that would cause this are a borrower's rate, any changes that negatively affect the applicant's ability to repay the mortgage, or changes in sales price or value. It's time for our final knowledge check. Kennedy's loan received a GUS Accept recommendation. A week prior to closing, Kennedy received a large bonus from her employer. Kennedy used the bonus to pay off the revolving debts on her credit report and added the remaining funds to her savings account. The Supreme Lending Underwriter must resubmit the loan through GUS. True or false? The correct answer is false. Decreases in personal liabilities and increases in assets do not require the GUS loan application to be updated. Thank you for attending Supreme Lending's USDA Rural Development Guaranteed Loan Program Training Part 2. Please remember to always reference the most recent Supreme Lending guidelines on Supreme Insight and USDA Rural Development publications available online. Thanks again and have a supreme day.